Hey everyone, and welcome to First Things First. We made it to Thursday. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We have a fantastic show ahead for you today. Carson Wentz has some lofty goals for himself. Mike Tomlin says he did discipline Antonio Brown, but we will start with Green Bay quarterback Aaron Rodgers. More specifically, Rodgers' knee, the knee that will most likely determine how far this Packers team will go this season. He sprained it in that wild win over the Chicago Bears in Week 1, then came out and threw for 281 yards and a score in a tie against the Vikings in Week 2. And after practice yesterday, he was honest, said he's concerned it might get worse as the season goes on, but he's still confident in his ability to adapt.
I'm a pass-first guy. You know, even when I get outside the pocket, I'm not looking to run. So I've played from the pocket for a number of years. I know my body better than anybody. I know what it's like to play with a knee injury for years in high school and junior college and at Cal. So I know what I'm capable of, depending on how that knee is. Obviously, it won't be 100%. So I'll just adjust accordingly to how I'm feeling and try and get through.
All right, CC, you're so good at explaining to us the things that we don't necessarily see with a quarterback. We see a guy who can walk, we assume he can just throw the ball. But how will this specific knee injury impact Rodgers on the field?
Well, this is a knee he's had problems with before. He mentioned in the interview he's had several procedures on the knee, started off when he was in high school. Aaron's always been a great athlete, but not like Dan Marino. Dan Marino injured his knee, which hampered him in college. And by the time he got to the pros, he couldn't move. But Dan Marino was a great athlete in high school, great basketball player, great baseball player. But the knee injuries, it really affected his ability. Aaron, it hasn't affected his ability. You wouldn't think that he's had multiple procedures on that knee. So what it does, Jenna, is he's had this same injury before. So your body, and you know this as someone who works out and an athlete, your body will recruit other muscles. And then once you do that activity, your body creates muscle memory. So now his body, he's used to, because he has such great arm talent, he can get his left leg out of the way and allow his arm just to throw the football. Aaron's right. He's a good athlete, but he's scrambling to try to throw the football. He knows exactly who he is, so he's not going to try. So his ability to be able to avoid another injury, because he knows what he can do, he knows what his limitations are, but he's not really trying to leave the pocket. So his ability to be able to play at a higher level than someone else, like I haven't seen a quarterback limp around the way he did last week. Typically, the coach will remove him or the player will remove himself because I can't protect myself from the defender. So because he's dealt with his left knee, multiple procedures, he will adjust to that. So those are the things that he's talking about. But this knee is not going to get better for a long time. Typically what happens is this is a knee that needs either 6 to 8 weeks of rest or a minor procedure if he has a little piece of cartilage. So
and he's not going to have neither, basically.
No, that's the life of an NFL. If it was an NBA, you know what happened? He either take the time off.
He'd take the time off.
Yeah.
He'd take the time off.
And either for the rehab or to have the procedure and still take the time off. But this is the life of an NFL player. And Aaron, because it's the same injury, the same body part, that's the reason why he would understand it better than our normal watch the injury report, how it will affect a guy, Nick.
Sometimes guys suffer an injury and then they suffer a different injury to a different body part, and we talk about the kinetic chain, right? Like, okay, so your hamstring's not firing quite the way it normally would, your body overcompensates, and that leads to a groin injury. But sometimes guys are dealing with an injury and they suffer an injury to a different body part, not because of the kinetic chain, but because they can't get out of danger as quickly as they used to be able to. And that's my concern with Aaron Rodgers, because you're right. How many of his highlights are him on the move? We don't talk so much about the Packers offensive line. Now, part of that's because of Brian Bulaga, and they have some quality players. And part of it's also because he gets out of harm's way, as well as just about any quarterback that is not a quarterback we think of as a traditional running quarterback. And what I know about Green Bay is this. If they have a compromised Aaron Rodgers, at the end of the season, they're not a Super Bowl team. The only way a team...
At the end of the season or the regular season?
Well, if you're in the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers, you can win the Super Bowl if he is operating close to maximum capacity. But if this... Forget staying at this level. If this knee deteriorates as the year goes on, then it can be a better season than it was last year for Green Bay. But I don't believe they have enough talent on the team as a whole. I think they have an average defense. I think they have good wide receivers. Aaron Jones, you pointed out, C, to remind that he's coming back from his suspension this week.
Yes.
They could have an above-average running game, but none of that speaks to Super Bowl contender, Super Bowl representative out of the NFC, unless you have near peak Aaron Rodgers. So, of course I'm worried about whether it's going to get better, but he also alluded to in his longer form comments yesterday about it getting worse. If it gets worse, then that injury in week 1 is going to be the defining moment of the Packers season. That's something we're going to have to wait and see on.
Well, I would imagine that if he is out there, then he can't do further damage to the knee. But let's get into specifics. What is he facing with this Washington defense coming up on Sunday?
Washington's got a good enough defense that they can put enough pressure on him in their front seven. They can't play enough coverage. One thing Aaron doesn't have to worry about, you're not going to see wholesale blitzes and stuff against Aaron Rodgers. Aaron doesn't face that type of pressure because he throws the ball so quick. Do they have enough guys playing man-to-man to be able to beat Aaron Rodgers? No. Can they drop in the zone to be able to beat Aaron Rodgers and not put pressure on him? No. But Green Bay, what they have to do to be able to help Aaron out, they have to be able to run the ball. Nick mentioned Aaron Jones coming back from a 2-game suspension. He was kind of the highlight of Aaron being injured in the end of last season as far as Green Bay, something they could build on. Jamal Williams, he did a good job running the ball in the Vikings game. So they have to run the ball more. Even if Aaron was healthy, I would be saying the same thing. If Green Bay wants to be different, if they want to be able to help out their defense, which I believe is far more talented than the defenses that we've seen, and this is a defense that has come up with big stops when they needed them at crucial parts in the game. They put a lot of draft capital into their secondary. It's starting to pay off. But running the football to be able to help Aaron out, then you can play action pass and take advantage of the secondary of the Redskins. And
Kevin King, their second-round pick from a year ago, he left the Vikings game with an injury. I think if they're going to be better than what I anticipate defensively, yes, those young defensive backs need to play well, but to me, it's about Kenny Clark and Mike Daniels up front on that defensive line. But the other reality for Green Bay is this. Also, Muhammad Wilkerson. They got that 3-man rotation. They've gotten so much better. Absolutely, they got some big people in there. Absolutely right. I shouldn't have left him out. But he was that they have, as far as teams that run in their base defense a 3-4, they have more talent than we talk about at that spot in particular. But it is critically important for Green Bay to get off to a good start this season. They have their bye in week 7. After the bye, in a 5-week stretch, they go to Los Angeles, to New England, to Minnesota, and to Seattle. Those are 4 of the either best teams or toughest places to play. It is critical that they go into the bye after 6 games, something close to 5-0-1 or 4-1-1 as they sit here at 1-0-1. So that's why this weekend's game has even of the utmost importance. Nick, I do believe Aaron's knee will get better as the season goes on. I believe when they get to the bye week, that will be a critical time for them. But if Green Bay, Mike McCarthy, if they can take advantage of this injury, well, how would they do that? Let's run the football. So even when Aaron is back healthy at the end of the season, that they have a running game, which leads to a play action, which also leads to keeping the defense off the field. Like if they're going to be a serious contender for a championship, they can take advantage of this time now by fortifying some other parts of their game.
All right, we're going to take a break, talk much more about this coming up. But on the other side, will we see Carson Wentz in MVP form when he makes his return Sunday? That's next on First Things First.
Hiring used to be hard. Multiple job sites, stacks of resumes, a confusing review process. But today, hiring can be easy, and you only have to go to one place to get it done, ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards. But they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 80% of employees who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. With results like that, it's no wonder ZipRecruiter is the highest-rated hiring site in America. And right now, listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. That's ZipRecruiter.com/FTF. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
All right, moving on to the Eagles now. So it may not have been when the Eagles fans wanted, but it is what they wanted. Carson Wentz back in the driver's seat heading into a game. Philly's quarterback was well on his way to winning the MVP before tearing his ACL and LCL. And while Nick Foles guided the Eagles to the Super Bowl, he's gotten them off to a shaky 1-1 start. Wentz isn't just looking to steady the ship. He's looking to pick up where his dominant season left off.
I and really the whole offense, this whole organization always has high expectations. You know, we expect to go out and start fast, play fast, be clicking. And so I truly believe that's a realistic expectation. Now, that's just football. You know, it's not always like that. So those things come, and you got to learn how to balance those ebbs and flows of the game and everything. But, you know, I think we all hold ourselves to high expectations around here.
CC, the other day, Coach Doug Peterson said he understands that Carson Wentz did miss a lot of game time, and going from the practice to the is going to be an adjustment even for a guy with his skill set. How hard will it be for Wentz to get back to where he left off?
Well, we have to remember, too, last season when Carson Wentz, there was still the jury was out. 50% of the people think, man, he is the guy. They had it right. Other people was like, well, it's not as if they didn't believe in his talent, but it's just a wait-and-see approach. We need to see more of Carson Wentz. Now, he put it together last week for 14 straight weeks that he was one of the best players.
When you say the jury's still out, you're saying going into last season.
Yes.
Week 1 of the 2017 season.
I mean, we still didn't know.
Absolutely.
I mean, after his rookie year, he didn't wow us. But
he had some wowing moments.
Yes.
It wasn't overall, it wasn't like,
we didn't think Philadelphia had made a mistake.
Correct.
But it was like, we can't really judge this. And like where he went to college. Did we think the NFL game was too big for him? We didn't know that. Last year, he removed that. But we don't have 5 years of him being all pro, being a Pro Bowler. No, we don't have that. We have a short sample size. So for his ability to be able to get back to that, it's a lot harder because we haven't seen him do it. If it was Drew Brees, if it was Aaron Rodgers, if it's other players, we've seen them through the years been able to put up tremendous numbers. Do I think he can do it? Yes. He doesn't have as much talent on the field when he gets hurt. So for me, it's about not trying to press, knowing he is the franchise quarterback, and also realizing the expectations for him have changed since he was hurt. The expectations for this organization. Last year during the season, they weren't talking about, hey, we're a better organization than New England Patriots. You know something? It's a lot more fun to play football here. No. That all changed after the underdog, after the unbelievable upset in Super Bowl 52. So now the expectations, Carson has to make sure that he doesn't succumb to the outside expectations and continue to try to grow himself as a young player. Don't turn the ball over. Don't try to do too much, and depend on Doug Peterson to be able to put him in good plays, take some shots down the field. Don't play conservative, but realize he's still developing. He hasn't played in any preseason game, so the speed of the game initially is what he's going to have to catch up to, which I believe he will. I believe he's a long-time star in this league, but we have to have patience and realize this kid's still young. He hadn't started that many games in the NFL, and it would take a couple weeks. If he had if he had everyone healthy, all his running backs healthy, Alshon Jeffries, all his wide receivers healthy, Mike Wallace, not on the injured reserve, I would be like, wow, they could throw for 300 yards. No, they want to try to win the football game, manage the game, but don't try to do too much and force turnovers and put your team in a bad spot, Nick.
You said something a couple days ago about Carson Wentz. It was almost a throwaway comment. But everything snapped into focus for me when you said it, because I thought it was a point no one had made, and it seems obvious after you say it, but before you said it, I hadn't even considered it, which was if Carson Wentz hadn't been injured, we would still be wondering, can he regain MVP form? Because he doesn't have the deep reservoir of success, of history. So, like, the last 15 NFL MVPs, 10 of them, Peyton, Brady, and Rodgers. Like, so those are 3 of the greatest 6 quarterbacks ever. Like, The other quarterbacks who've won it in that stretch, Steve McNair. He's a great player. God rest his soul. He never got that MVP form quite back. He was good after that, but never as good as he was in 03. Cam, still looking for it. Matt Ryan, still looking for it. So we've seen guys, and it's not because of injury for any of those guys, that they had this amazing season, and they were good players after that, maybe very good players after that, but they weren't what they were that one magical year. And so absent of injury, the question on Wentz would have been, was it one magical year? Or is this who he is? The number 2 overall pick, a guy who became a number 2 overall pick despite going to North Dakota State, which almost makes it more impressive. And so that has made me temper my expectations, because then you add to it the injury, you add to it the rust, and you add what I think is a real thing. Sometimes I think pressure is overrated. I think he has a special type of pressure on him. When your team wins the Super Bowl without you, even though everyone knows they wouldn't have been in position to win the Super Bowl without him, they went on that run. They had those magical 2 games without him. There is a different level of pressure on this guy in year 3, coming off a significant injury where he's been away from football for the longest period of his adolescent or adult life.
Absent of Alshon Jeffrey and maybe another 1 or 2 guys, it's basically the same team around him that was there when he was in this MVP formed stretch of his. How much does that help him, that there's that same familiarity around him with the same team?
It definitely helps. It definitely helps because you don't need as many game reps when you've already had live reps. What does Tom Brady talk about with the wide receivers? They've made 28 transactions, bottom of that roster for wide receivers since May. Tom Brady talks about trust. When you have some trust, then there's other things that you don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about the guys who are going to have the hot read because you got trust. You've played games with them. You have practices with them. So I do believe that's very, very important. Alshon Jeffries, when he can come back, being healthy. Getting Matthews over. Matthews was there his rookie year. Right. So he's very, very familiar with the offense. So, yes, familiar faces, they help a quarterback. We always give credit to the quarterback. But what about that offensive line? Let's run the ball. Let's let that offensive line. How much help could they be to Carson?
And that's the same 5 guys.
Yes.
That is the offensive line is unchanged. I don't want to underplay what you mentioned. You said aside from Alshon Jeffrey. Well, last year, their wide receiving core, Zach Ertz still there, but their wide receiving core essentially was Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, Nelson Aguilar. They flip out Torrey Smith for Mike Wallace. That theoretically is an upgrade, but not anymore. Not with Mike Wallace on IR. And Alshon Jeffrey is not playing right now. So now for the quarterback, guys that he's missing, 2 of the 3 guys he had a rapport with last year. It's why Jordan Matthews was a bigger addition for Philly than he would have been for almost any other team.
Yes.
Because there is familiarity.
Felt like it was a better fit in Philly than it would have been in New England.
Right. Absolutely right. And so I think Carson Wentz, you said the jury was out on him. One of the first shows we ever did, we were talking about the Eagles, I think after week 1. And I said, man, I had no idea what to think of Carson Wentz after year 1, because we have to remember, Carson's rookie year, the rookie quarterback story was not Carson Wentz. It was Jared Goff looking like a disaster. It was Jared Goff, the number 1 overall pick, and Jeff Fisher, and him having a historically bad year. So Wentz flew under the radar a little bit. But we saw some elite-level plays from him that started to sell me, and by the midway point of the year, he was the league MVP. I think it's a soft landing for him, getting the Colts in week 1. I think that's a good opponent to be able to go up against. I think it's beneficial also to be at home in week 1 and to have the crowd behind you was your first game back since you were on the road when you blew out your knee and got your knee messed up against the Rams. So all those things I think work in his favor. But I think you're right on tempering the expectations from a statistical standpoint, particularly given the weapons.
Yes. One thing on the Colts defense is much improved. They've gotten a little bit bigger up front. They have Malik Hooker, their safety back. Also, they're getting some pressure off the edge. Top 10 defense as far as points given up. Last week, they squashed Washington. Adrian Peterson, they were off to that great start.
11 carries, 20 yards.
That's what they did to them. So let's not think this is the Colts defense he is facing a better defense. And the other thing, the reason why I believe he returns the MVP form and why he's going to be a star, Matty Ice, when he was MVP, the last 2 quarterbacks that were MVP you mentioned, Matty Ice, he had several people around him in that year, besides Kyle Shanahan, who had career years. So their team offensively had a career year. Cam Newton, he had guys around him in that year. They had career years. Carson, he didn't have that. He didn't have anybody around him last year, had a career year. And also, he's a better thrower of the football than those other two quarterbacks. That's why I believe he can return as an MVP, and that's why I believe long-term, he's going to be a star in this league because of that. His consistency throwing the football. And it wasn't dependent on, hey, my running back had 20 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Oh, the wide receiver had 15.
Ginn all of a sudden played way over his skis.
No. The reason why it was about him. So I believe that is duplicatable.
Carson Wentz makes his season debut Sunday as the Eagles host the Colts. Coming up, would a Browns loss mean the beginning of the Baker Mayfield era? That's next on First Things First. We've got two huge Big Ten games this weekend on FS1 starting tomorrow night as number 10 Penn State takes on Illinois at 9 Eastern. Then on Saturday morning, Nebraska battles number 19 Michigan at the Big House, all on FS1, all on the Fox Sports app.
Scott Frost still trying to get that Nebraska era on track like the UCF program that he got to undefeated status. Michigan.
Yeah, they're going to get drilled by Michigan.
Oh.
Yeah, their freshman quarterback sensation out, best player on their team.
It is now time for Say What? This is great. Yesterday, Jordan Matthews signed with the Eagles after playing one season up in Buffalo. Matthews had an absolutely hysterical response to a question about his time with the Bills. Say what?
Man, it's been good. It's been really good. I got a great wife. So I actually got married last June. So I got married actually in Philadelphia in Botanical Gardens. Yeah, man, I got married June 10th. And I didn't have my wedding, like formal wedding, until February. And so when I was in Buffalo, there's like nothing to do there except have fun with your wife. So then she got pregnant. So we always say we got a Buffalo baby. Ain't nothing to do there except each other.
Okay.
He's honest.
All right. They're grown.
Yeah.
That you know Jordan, right?
Yes.
Jordan's one of your guys.
We were talking about Buffalo and just talking about not necessarily the best remarks. And I was like, man, they don't have any wide receivers. Man, by the time I got off the show, my phone, hey, Unc, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm up here in Buffalo. You talking about? I was like, oh, man, I forgot they had traded you.
It was like week 2 of the season.
Yeah, I forgot they had traded you.
Right.
You're right. I'll fix that tomorrow. Yeah,
And you did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, because he can play. He can play, but he's got to be in the right system. He's in the right place. Nice to be able to go to Buffalo. Buffalo, we appreciate that. Adding to the Matthews family. They're expecting great. That's
awesome. Ain't nothing to do but each other. All right, Jordan.
Very
Good
nice
for you, man.
Nice.
Good
well
for you.
said. Time for stories to start your morning now. Tiger Woods makes his
Let's
return
go.
to the Tour Championship.
Let's go, Tiger.
For the first time in 5 years, teeing off at 12:30. Guess where me and Nick and Cece will be at 12:30. Tiger said that he's impressed himself by getting back to this event. See, what do you expect from Tiger?
This is a tough event. I'm going to be in Atlanta, so I'm trying to get out to the golf course for at least one day. This is a birdie barrage, though. You got to go for birdies here because it's a dash for the cash. It's the lowest score. Typically, there's about 15 guys that can win the year honors, so they make a lot of birdies. Tiger, I'm looking for a top 5 finish. He was able to get a week off last week. He likes this golf course.
Played well in his last tournament.
Yeah, this should be the grand finale. He has had a spectacular season, even if he doesn't have the top 5 finish that I'm predicting this weekend.
All right, so this is the last event of the year. Both you and I said he's going to win at some point this year. He hadn't won yet, so I guess he's winning this week. It wouldn't necessarily give him the even if he wins this tournament, it doesn't make him the FedEx Cup champion. He would need some other results from the guys in the top 5, but he's eligible to win the FedEx Championship with a win. Keep in mind, the last 2 majors, he has the lowest score to par of anybody on tour. He's played well in the events leading up to the Tour Championship just to get eligible, to get in the top 30. It's only a 30-person field. I'm going with Tiger. For top 5, I agree, top 5. Top 1 finish to finish off what is a great season for Tiger.
All right, moving on. The Patriots take on the Lions Sunday night. Bill Belichick going up against his former defensive coordinator in Lions head coach Matt Patricia. Pencil and laminates aside, Belichick says Patricia does an excellent job in all areas. Nick, what will be Patricia's biggest challenge? Coaching against Belichick and the Pats?
Well, right now his biggest challenge is if they can just play a complete game of 60 minutes and if he can get some of the more basic parts of head coaching down. He had a big tiff with the local media in Buffalo this week about how he managed the clock at the end of the first half. He didn't seem to understand what they were asking him about. And Bill Belichick has an extraordinary record against everyone, a particularly extraordinary record against his part of his coaching tree. I expect that to continue this weekend.
When I think about Matt Patricia going against Bill Belichick, I go back to Belichick, what he told Josh McDaniels when he talked him in from going to Indy. If you stay, I'll teach you some of the trade secrets and everything. So Matt Patricia left out the door. Belichick didn't tell him those trade secrets. I guess Josh is getting those now. So Josh and Belichick against Patricia, no match.
Yeah, it also wouldn't be great. You have two people trying to leave. If Jenna and I were both like, see, we're thinking about taking other jobs, and you say to Jenna, listen, I'm going to do everything I can to keep you. Nick, good luck. I'll see you later. I mean, that ain't great. And that's kind of what happened in this situation.
I love you, Nick.
Yeah. Hey, people, send in your applications. Hey, I'll let them both go.
God. I mean.
Take that, Jenna.
Took 2 seconds off, and look what happened. Hey, speaking of the
Dusty
Patriots,
and Deontay, let's do this.
Deontay's already here. He's sprinting. Josh Gordon made his Patriots practice debut yesterday. In fact, Gordon was given the locker right next to Tom Brady's. CeCe, first of all, why? And second of all, will we see any sort of contribution from Gordon Sunday night against Detroit?
Why what?
Why did they put the locker next to Brady's? How do they decide who goes where?
What if that one was available?
That's my guess. My guess is that's the one that was available.
Yeah, and Tom Brady has 2 lockers. So he's got a few people next to him.
Got it.
All right? All the star players, because they have more mail, more shoes, they're bigger time. And they let you know that they're getting 2 lockers. It means nothing.
Oh, okay.
But what about a secondary question? What you expect to see him on Sunday?
I would like to see him inactive. I'd like to see him inactive for the first 2 weeks because I don't think he can do anything this week to be able to help him out.
Oh, I thought you were going to continue. My apologies. I think he will because they have if he's inactive, they're looking at only having 3 wide receivers plus Matthew Slater, a special teamer, active. Now, they've done that before, but I think they hope to have him active and have him on the field for 10 to 15 plays. What he does with that is anyone's guess, but my guess is the Patriots hope that he can be active Sunday night against Detroit.
All right, finally, Thursday Night Football, Jets in Cleveland. Browns actually favored in this one. First time that's happened in years as they look to snap their 19-game winless streak. CeCe, what has to happen for the Browns to beat the Jets?
Their offense got to be a lot better. I've watched the Browns, watched their tape the last 2 games, and I've watched Todd Haley since he's been a coach in this league, position coach, coordinator. He is calling plays to try to prevent the quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, from losing the game. Now, they don't have a bunch of explosive players. They need to rely on their running game, Carlos Hyde and a couple other running backs to be able to get them at least 30 carries. I don't like the lack of continuity in the passing game. Jarvis Landry potentially could be missing this game. You're talking about Antonio Callaway being your number one guy. So even when Dez Bryant was visiting the Browns, I was hoping the Browns would sign him even though Josh was coming back. And now they're going to really miss Josh Gordon and or not signing Dez Bryant. Not a lot of great offensive personnel, not a lot of great plays that Todd Haley can go to. I believe the Jets get it done today.
So we are on opposite sides of this, but we agree on the Browns' struggles on offense. If people haven't been watching the Browns, it's very odd what Todd Haley's doing, the way he's calling the games, because the biggest benefit, theoretically, to having Tyrod Taylor as your quarterback is he doesn't turn the ball over. You don't have to worry about him losing games. Yet in these first 2 weeks, despite the conservative play calling, Tyrod's had not just an interception in each of the first 2 games, but interceptions that have come at the worst possible time in each of the first 2 games. The reason, despite that, and despite the fact that Jarvis might not play, that I think the Browns will get their first win since the end of 2016 is I do not think the Jets can handle the Browns front. The Jets, we've talked all offseason about the Jets when Darnold got out there, whether it was week 1 or not, how he was going to potentially struggle because of the offensive line. Myles Garrett has been exactly the guy we thought he would be coming out of Texas Texas A&M. They got a guy, Larry Ogunjobi, who on the defensive line, who's been excellent. You can go down. Emmanuel Ogba's played well. They've spent a lot of high draft capital on that defensive front. I think this will be a low-scoring game, but I think the Browns' defense, which has been, when you look at who they've played and what they've done against these teams, particularly the Saints game, you say, oh, okay, so Cleveland, a Pittsburgh team that went and scored 37. They held them to 21. The Saints offense is not clicking on all cylinders either. Well, in Week 1 it was, though. In Week 1.
Well, no, they were playing catch-up against Tampa Bay. Sure. They were playing catch-up. They were down 21. They had to throw the ball to get back, and it still wasn't enough. Sure. I understand that the numbers were inflated because they were down so big so early against Tampa, but they still put up 40 points. My point is the two teams they've played have scored 35-plus in the games not against Cleveland, and they've scored 21 against Cleveland. I think Cleveland's got a good defense. Denzel Ward has played outstanding as a rookie corner. Yeah, he had a great game, number one, came back down to earth in last week's game. And so I think that this is a low-scoring game that Cleveland wins. If they don't, then, and see, you said something going into the break about that you thought we could see Baker during this football game potentially. I've watched the games, man. I watch how the coordinators are calling the game. And that's the only reason why I say that. I see that, and I see that they're trying to protect the quarterback. Now, people in Cleveland might not think it's enough time, but seeing how Todd is calling plays, that's the way to be able to rejuvenate that offense, to give it some type of boost, because Baker can drive the football down the field, and I haven't seen that in 8 quarters of football.
With Tyrod Taylor. All right, let's move on. Great Week 3 matchup on the schedule, and not just because our guy C's calling this game. Saints and Falcons square off in Atlanta. Drew Brees and the Saints thankful to be 1-1 after just barely beating the Browns thanks to Zane Gonzalez's lack of kicking accuracy. Falcons are coming off a huge bounce-back win over the Panthers after an ugly Week 1 loss to the Eagles. All right, CC, what is the key to this matchup?
Man, quarterback play. We got 2 of the best playing in the game. I'm a huge fan of Matty Ice, probably more so of a fan than people think. People have said it's been the system, it's been Julio Jones. I think he's one of the quality throwers of the football and how he runs the offense. From a defensive standpoint, how do the Falcons stop Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara coming out of the backfield? They lost Deion Jones, their number 1 linebacker who plays every snap. Great speed linebacker, sideline to sideline. They lost their safety in Neal. Now they have backups in there playing against Drew Brees. So that's going to be a question they're going to have to answer. For the Atlanta Falcons, people always talk about Matty Ice, Julio Jones. But the record indicates when they spread the ball around, that's when they're more effective. Tevin Campbell last week filling in for Freeman, getting over 100 yards rushing. That offense looked in sync. They've played some good football. One play, and they're away from being 2-0, and they've had one of the tougher schedules, facing the world champs on opening Thursday night. They should have won that game, and what I thought was a dominating performance against Carolina in last week's game. Listen, you've been studying this game all week since you're calling it, so I have a couple questions I want to ask you about it. Real quick, my thoughts, you alluded to it there. If people didn't watch Carolina-Atlanta, that game was more lopsided than a 1-touchdown deficit would lead you to believe. Carolina jumped out to a 10-3 lead. From that moment forward, Atlanta thoroughly dominated that football game en route to getting up 31-17. Carolina got a late touchdown in order to make it closer than it actually was. Atlanta's offense from about midway through the first quarter to about midway through the fourth felt like it scored a touchdown every time it touched the football. And most importantly for them, after struggling in the red zone in Week 1, 4 red zone shots in Week 2, 4 touchdowns. When you've been watching the Saints, though, the story of the Saints last year was 2 things other than Drew Brees. Alvin Kamara as a 6-yard per carry guy in addition to what he was doing as a receiver, and the defense. The rookies on the defense, Kamara was a rookie as well. Kamara all of a sudden is averaging less than 4 yards per carry this year. Do you think that's because Mark Ingram's not there with the punch? And what do you make of their defensive struggles as you've watched the film on these 2 games? Well, it's a combination of both. You do miss Mark Ingram, and the wear and tear on Kamara, that's not going to be the book on him long term. He is not an every down back. But their offensive line hadn't played as well, especially interior. Both their guards haven't played as well. Armstead, their left tackle, is back to the form that we saw him playing at. He negated, for the Browns on Myles Garrett on the outside. I mean, he negated him the whole game and didn't get no hits on Drew Brees, didn't get any help the whole game. So I think it's a combination. The offensive line is not up to speed where they are. They are a top 10 offensive line. So that's going to have an effect on Kamara. And they just haven't been able to get the deep pass to be able to open up the offense. They've been force-feeding Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas, I think, has 26 catches after 2 games. So you can continue to see him emerge as one of the best wide receivers. But this offense looked a lot like it did the first couple weeks of the season last year before they got in sync and went on that tremendous run.
No, I was going to ask you about Michael Thomas. He seems like he's been the standout guy so far.
He's 30 targets, 28 catches. So it's not only that they're, targeting him a lot. He's catching, 94% of his target. And so he's been outstanding, which they obviously, that's who they thought he was going to be when they traded away Brandon Cooks last year and allowed him to take on a bigger role. But the concern for me with New Orleans, and again, last year they started 0-2. They've started 0-2 a bunch over the last half decade. The concern was last year's defense an aberration? They have, I think, 3 sacks on the season as a team. They're not forcing turnovers. Like the Saints, we know what their ceiling is when they are an offense-only team. We had seen it for years leading post-Super Bowl until last year. So this is a tough contest for their defense with the way Atlanta has been playing, even moving the ball against Philly, despite their red zone struggles.
The biggest struggle defensively has been Marshawn Lattimore. He got cooked in the first game against Evans at Tampa Bay. Didn't necessarily do that much better in the Cleveland game, even though they didn't have a whole bunch of talent that they were sending them. So he struggled in his sophomore season after being rookie player of the year. So that part right there, if they're able to shore up that, because, man, you can't have a guy. I think last year he had a passing rating against him like 58, and this year it's over 150. Like, you can't not have that big a disparity from year 1 to year number 2. So look for the young Buckeye to get back on track.
You will be calling it. Pull your ear or something for me, just so I know, because then it'll be fun to be like, look, I'm watching him. Okay, we're going to move on. Coming up, has Mike Tomlin put an end to all the drama in Pittsburgh? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We are now joined by former NFL head coach, all-around funny guy, Eric Mangini.
Good to see you, sir.
All-around funny guy.
Gave you some love. Thought you'd appreciate it.
One of our favorites.
Yeah.
My moniker.
Yeah, it is. All right, so maybe taking Monday off without telling anyone isn't such a great idea after all. Note to self. Steelers wide receiver Antonio Brown did it and was subsequently disciplined as a result. Came from head coach Mike Tomlin, who didn't go into detail on what the exact discipline was for AB, so perhaps that settles that. Coach, would a win over the 2-0 Bucs quiet all the noise seemingly percolating around Pittsburgh right now?
Yes. And this is what happens is when you start the way that they've started, there's a lot of frustration, and the expectation was totally different, and they'd have the issues with Le'Veon Bell. So there's been a lot of things. There's a transition at coordinator. They're finding their way. But remember last season, they lost early to Chicago, and everybody thought, oh, my God, what's happening? They played a tough game against Cleveland. They ended up winning the first game, but people, that's where it started. And then they had the disaster against Jacksonville in Week 5, and everybody thought the sky was falling. Then they go on and win 8 straight games. So they have the potential to get on a streak here once they get off, this pattern that they've been on. And to me, anytime they've got the talent that they have offensively, they can start winning in bunches pretty quickly.
Coach, I didn't like the fact that Mike Tomlin, and I'm a fan of Mike Tomlin, how he does things, that he felt, and I'm going to say this, he felt as if he had to announce that there was some type of punishment on Antonio. Typically, Coach, when there's some type of punishment, you say it's going to be dealt with in-house, and then it's squashed. But Mike Tomlin, in this case, had to say, because of maybe some of the outside pressure,
yes.
Did you think that was a little bit different than what a head coach typically would do?
Well, I don't know what pressure he had from above. Sometimes the owner wants to make sure that everybody knows that this doesn't fly. And you send a message. There's a lot of different ways to send a message. You can do it in the meeting room, and then you can send a message collectively or externally. We're not going to accept this behavior. So even Antonio Brown is the player that he is. He's not above the Pittsburgh Steelers. And sometimes you get directives from from your boss, but you can't say, oh, yeah, by the way, the owner wanted me to bring this up. I don't know that for sure, but it does happen.
Coach, give us a little peek behind the scenes. We always hear, oh, he's been disciplined, and that's sort of the end of it. What is discipline to a guy like Antonio Brown, who's not going to miss playing time, who a financial hit, I mean, how tough could it possibly be? What does a discipline like that look like?
Yeah, well, he missed a whole day of practice. I don't know how much money you can take away from him, but it's pretty significant. Will it make a difference in the grand scheme of things based off what he makes? No, and that's the issue you have when you pay guys that amount and they have guaranteed money. But it still does hurt. Nobody wants to lose $20,000, $50,000, whatever the case may be. And then it's trying to get an understanding with those guys that regardless of what regardless of what your level of frustration is, or what your level of success is, or what your level of talent is, there's a bigger picture here. And you've got to be able to look beyond yourself if you want to collectively be successful as a team. And hopefully that got through to Antonio when they had their meeting.
As far as your point, C, about him announcing it publicly, I think Coach obviously makes a great point that maybe there was the owner was exerting pressure. But I can tell you guys firsthand, man, the local media in Pittsburgh is frothing at the mouth about Mike Tomlin right now. And I think we sometimes on a national level forget how intense that can make a head coach's job when the local media seems to almost be unanimous in agreement you don't do things the right way. People are constantly bringing up how Jacksonville's doing things, and Jacksonville's a team they've had trouble with. Jacksonville, when their star player tweets, he gets suspended. When Antonio
but they had a few other fights, and they had some other stuff leading up to it. No one gets suspended for their first offense.
See,
so there's no comparison of what Jacksonville and what they're doing compared to Pittsburgh.
I totally agree, but I'm just letting you know what the narrative in that town is right now. And you mentioned it yesterday. The greatest Steeler ever, our friend Terry Bradshaw, has been very critical of Mike Tomlin. That does not help his situation. And as far as the knock on Tomlin is too lax, too much of a player's coach. We talked about some of the reasons why that knock might exist yesterday, but it's still there. And so I think one of the reasons it was announced publicly, whatever the owner may have said notwithstanding, was because they are trying to get this message out there organizationally that Mike Tomlin does have a firm handle of things, because you obviously, unfortunately, know what this is like. If the local media turns against you, it can snowball, and it can make your job that is already highly difficult even more difficult, I would assume.
Yeah, it can definitely do that. But this is the example of high-class problems. In Cleveland, they're desperately trying to win a game. They'll be happy when they win a game. In Pittsburgh, you lose a game or two, and the world is coming to an end. They've been so successful for so long under Mike Tomlin. Am I saying that he can't do things better? No, he could, and he knows that he can do things better. It's not like he doesn't have self-awareness. One of the things Mike has a great level of is self-awareness, and he does take accountability when things go wrong. I like that about him, too. Is it perfect? Is it Jacksonville? No, but that's not who Mike Tomlin is. Is it New England? No, but that's not who Mike Tomlin is. Mike Tomlin is who he is, and that works for him. Is it always going to look like everybody else wants it to look? No, but they win a lot of games for a long time. I think that
some people, too, think that, well, maybe if you fine them, they should do something more significant. I think that was part of the question, that maybe he should miss some time on the field. The reason why in team sports you can't do that is because you penalize the other 52 guys. And all the other guys were there. So you don't penalize me when I come to work and I'm on a team with another person. You take it strictly out of them. Either they do some extra running, they have some other assignments, they can be restricted to the hotel when you get on the road. There's a number of other things that a football coach can make you uncomfortable. And there's another thing, too. We ain't going to throw him the ball. All right? Like, we ain't going to give him the ball early. Like, we're not going to have 18 targets. Coaches don't tell you that. But a lot of times that can be your discipline. I'm going to have him out there on the field, out there running around, and he knows. Instead of me calling his number, because when you're the featured guy in the offense, you know when they're trying to get it to you. And you also know when they're trying to use you as a decoy. So that can also be part of his punishment as a coaching staff. When we're fans, we don't understand how these teams operate, but we can't punish the whole team when you're in a team-oriented environment, you got to be able to punish the individual.
You talked about what happened last year and how once they got through that Jacksonville game, which, by the way, that was the game. Wasn't that the game that Roethlisberger came out and said he wanted? Then they got on a roll. They're still going to be probably riding their own ship, but they're going to have to do it most likely, seemingly, without Le'Veon Bell. I mean, that's still putting them at a little bit of a disadvantage. So now you're not exactly having the exact same offensive firepower that you had last year. Are you still confident they can find their ways again?
Well, even with Le'Veon Bell, when he first came back last year, it's not like he tore it up. He struggled early on. He had to get
first month or so.
Yeah, first month, and James Conner has done a really good job in terms of his production, both in the running game and the passing game. It's not like there's been this significant drop-off. Would they want Le'Veon Bell back? Yeah, of course. And we talk about this a lot. You go into a season with who you think you are, and then the good teams realize who they need to be. You know what I mean? There's a big difference between who you want to be and who you need to be. And New England's greatest asset is they always figure out who they need to be to win. And hopefully Pittsburgh should be able to do the same thing.
Bart Scott, write that down.
Write down. It's about who you want to be, who you need to be, that whole soliloquy. Yes. All right, I got it. This is for me.
Who are you writing it down for?
Just write it down.
Okay,
I'll disperse it.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Coach, stick around. Coming up, is Aaron Rodgers concerned about his knee? We hear from him next on First Things First. Back here with Coach Mangini. Aaron Rodgers' knee was the talk of the town in Green Bay after practice yesterday. The knee he sprained in that wild win over the Bears in Week 1. The knee he played on and threw for 281 yards in a tie against the Vikings in Week 2. And the knee he will undoubtedly play on to face Washington in Week 3 on Sunday. Rodgers dished out a little honesty with reporters yesterday. Says he is concerned it might get worse, but confident he can adapt.
I'm a pass-first guy. You know, even when I get outside the pocket, I'm not looking to run. So I played from the pocket for a number of years. I know my body better than anybody. I know what it's like to play with a knee injury for years in high school and junior college and at Cal. So I know what I'm capable of, depending on how that knee is. Obviously, it won't be 100%. So I'll just adjust accordingly to how I'm feeling and try and get through.
All right, Coach, how does this injury now impact Aaron Rodgers the rest of the season?
What he said was very honest and very accurate. The advantage here for him and for the Packers is that he has experienced injuries in the past and that he does understand how his body responds to it. And this should actually get better as the weeks go on. Even if the injury doesn't improve, their preparation during the week, understanding what gives him the best chance to be successful on Sunday, is a little bit of trial and error. And each week that they go through, he's going to realize this is my best plan. And then from a play calling standpoint, Aaron Rodgers is no wilting flower. He's going to self-advocate. He's going to make sure that he gets the plays that he feels the most comfortable running and give him the best chance to be successful. So is it going away? No. Does he have experience with this? Yeah, that's huge. Do they have these first 2 weeks to really understand how the knee responds and what treatment it responds to? Yeah, those things as well. Now, for him to say he's not a movement quarterback, that's one. Yeah, that's one of the things he does really well. Is it the only thing he does well? No, but he does that really well. And those extended plays that he makes have been extremely effective. So that part is a limiting factor.
To me, he does that better than any quarterback that I'm familiar with. Like that, as far as his
Russell Wilson's pretty good at running around. So
Russell Wilson's great. Russell Wilson's great at running around. You're absolutely right. But as far as when I'm talking about the all-time great quarterbacks, the thing that I think he does better than any of them are those throws on the move. Like, the pictures in my head, I don't have Steve Young was obviously great at it as well, but I don't have as many, I have almost none of Brady doing it. Very few of Peyton doing it. Like, even Joe Montana more so than Brady or Peyton, but not like Aaron Rodgers. So my question for you would be this. From a defensive perspective, how different is your approach, if at all, knowing what you know about Aaron Rodgers' health? How different would you attack if you're Washington? Would you approach the game? Would you blitz more? What would you do if you're running Washington's defense after seeing Aaron in the Minnesota game?
Well, blitzing typically isn't very effective against him because it's a West Coast offense and things come out on time. Now, what I would do is you don't have to keep contained as much as you would have in the past, which means set an edge on both sides to make sure he can't get out of the pocket. If anything, I would probably add more line games where the pressure's coming in the middle to make him get off the spot, to make him move on that knee, as opposed to be able to sit in that pocket and step up in the pocket, which is what he'd want to do.
It's harder to make him if he has to throw going to his left. So not only would I be more involved with stunts in the middle, as Coach would say, but also I would bring heat off the side that he can see and force him to his left. If you can see in the last week's game, and the Vikings did a good job of mixing up coverages. They had some zero blitzes. They had a casino blitz where there was no safety in the middle. And Aaron was calling out, casino, and they still threw the ball and got rid of it. But it gave him that look. When you saw him scrambling to his left, you could see he wasn't trying to throw the ball as much down the field as when he went to the right. When he went to the right, he was still surveying the field. The left, he made a short pass to the running back, and then the other time, Barr eased up on him when he had to run out of bounds, but his struggle was going to his left. So I would try to generate pressure off that right side.
So go ahead.
And what you try to do each week as you evaluate quarterbacks is truly understand their scramble pattern. What do they do when they go to the right? Is that a scramble to throw situation? What do they do when they go to the left? Is that a scramble to run situation? Where are they most effective? And then as you're designing your pass rush scheme or where you want to get the pressure, you're obviously trying to flush that guy, if he's going to flush, in the place that he's least successful.
I feel like you, with other teams, we've talked a lot about you saying they say we're going to commit to the run, they say this, but they don't actually commit to the run. The Packers have Aaron Jones coming back off his suspension, as we discussed earlier. He was a bright spot of their offense last year, even post-Aaron Rodgers injury in a year without a lot of bright spots. Could an increased focus on the running game as Rodgers' knee, you're saying you're not worried about it deteriorating. You actually think it's going to, even if the knee doesn't technically get better, their ability to deal with it will get better.
Yes.
As that proceeds, would you try at least to lean on Aaron Jones more than you typically would on an Aaron Rodgers-led team?
Anytime you can lean on the running game, it's a great thing, and it opens up so many other areas. But in a West Coast offense, a lot of those throws are just a substitution for an outside run. So you can throw those quick throws, and it's a different way to get the ball quickly in the flat, just like you would if you were tossing the ball out on a run. So there's an element of substituting short passes for runs to kind of get to the same thing.
The reason why I like running the ball, because the short passing, it does help the running game. But the reason why I like running the ball, because it sets up play action pass. If you want to take a deep shot down the field, the best way to do it, the best protection is out of a run action, and also it's the best way to allow the separation between the linebackers who will be coming up and the wide receivers who will be traveling down the field. So instead of dropping back and having Aaron trying to beat someone with his throw, you can beat him with the action and try to get big plays down the field, because Green Bay's offense is not the same when they don't generate those big plays.
Is your outlook for this Packers season different now than it was before? You said, you don't think the team's that concerned about his knee because they'll adapt. But do you think that they are in the same shape they were in before Aaron Rodgers hurt his knee?
No, you can't ever be in the same shape if your best player is nursing an injury. Do I think that they have the ability to manage this? Yes. Do I think they desperately need to keep Aaron Rodgers on the field at all costs? Yes, because if they have to go to the number 2, it's going to look like what it looked like in Chicago, and, they're going to have a high draft pick.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.